When Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov publicly revealed that the Gulf nations had categorically refused to allow the United States to use their airspace or bases to attack Iran, he did more than record an isolated diplomatic fact. He exposed a deep fissure in the fabric of the regional alliances that Washington had cultivated over decades. Lavrov went further. He revealed how Washington's initial provocation, followed by the discreet evacuation of high-value assets and the perceived abandonment of its Arab allies, turned those partners into vulnerable targets for Iranian retaliation. The missiles and drones that struck facilities in Bahrain, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and other points in the Gulf were not mere acts of desperation from Tehran. They were the predictable consequence of a policy that underestimated the costs of uncontrolled escalation and left exposed those who depended on American protection. This dynamic does not arise from a vacuum. It reflects the implacable workings of geopolitics, where control of the coastal strip surrounding the continental heartland determines the global balance of power. Iran, with its central position in the Persian Gulf, controls the Strait of Hormuz, through which 1/5 of the world's oil passes. Dominance over it means leverage over entire economies, from Europe to Asia. The effective closure of the strait by the Iranians, in response to the attacks initiated on February 28, 2026, confirms this reality with brutal clarity. The United States and Israel are already in open war with Iran, and the maritime blockade imposed by Tehran imposes immediate and global costs. Moscow and Beijing, each in its own way, provide strategic and tactical support that transforms Tehran into a resilient actor, capable of resisting Western pressure and complicating American calculations. The result is a harsh lesson for policymakers. Power is not sustained by declarations of intent, but by the ability to anticipate rivals' responses and maintain balance through credible force and alliances based on convergent interests, not illusions of permanent solidarity. To understand the present, one must return to the strategic map that defines the great battles for influence. The Eurasian coastal strip is not a mere transition zone. It is the decisive terrain where the fates of empires are decided. Iran emerges as the pivot of this game. Russia and China see in Tehran a partner that distracts Washington from the European theater and the Indo-Pacific, dilutes American resources, and strengthens a network of resistance that challenges the remaining order. Russia's strategies of support for Iran reveal a hybrid approach, calibrated to maximize gains with minimal risk. Since the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Agreement signed in January 2025, Moscow has deepened military cooperation in a discreet but effective manner. The initial transfer of Shahid drone technology from Iran to Russia for use in Ukraine has partially reversed the flow. Confirmed reports indicate that Russia now supplies Iran with upgraded versions of these drones, equipped with navigation and communication components resistant to electronic interference, derived from Ukrainian combat experience. This assistance allows Tehran to launch saturating swarms against Gulf and Israeli air defenses, forcing interception systems to exhaust valuable munitions. In addition, Russia shares satellite imagery obtained by its aerospace systems, including the Qayyam, enabling Iran to map naval and land targets in the region with precision. This is not a matter of large-scale direct deployment of Russian troops. Moscow avoids open confrontations with Washington to avoid diverting resources from its own war in Ukraine. Instead, the tactic is indirect support, intelligence, components, and tactical advice that increase Iranian lethality without unnecessarily exposing Russian forces. Economically, Russia facilitates sanctions evasion by purchasing Iranian oil through alternative routes in the Caspian Sea and integrates Tehran into forums such as the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, where discussions on energy and security reinforce mutual ties. This approach reflects cold power calculation. Russia, as a revisionist power limited by resources, uses Iran as a partner that weakens the American rival without compromising its own survival. China adopts a more subtle posture, aligned with its long-term vision of the same strategic coastal strip. The 25-year cooperation agreement signed in 2021 and accelerated in subsequent implementations channels Chinese investments into Iran's energy sector in exchange for discounted crude supplies. Even amid the war that began in February 2026, China continues to absorb significant volumes of Iranian crude, securing its energy needs while indirectly financing the regime's resilience. This partnership goes beyond trade. Beijing supplies dual-use components for missiles and drones, anti-stealth radar systems such as the YLC-8B, and access to its Beidou navigation system, which replaces American GPS in Iranian military operations. Western intelligence reports confirm that this aid has improved the accuracy of Iranian strikes against Gulf bases and targets in Israel, allowing ballistic missiles and drones to reach objectives with greater efficiency even under intense electronic warfare conditions. China avoids direct and open military commitments, preferring the role of technological and diplomatic enabler. In the UN Security Council and forums such as BRICS, Beijing condemns American and Israeli actions, positioning itself as a defender of sovereignty while advancing its Belt and Road Initiative through Iranian ports and infrastructure. This strategy is classic: exert influence through economic and technological means, without the cost of permanent garrisons. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz by the Iranians, which interrupts vital energy flows, indirectly serves Chinese interests in diversification and pressure on the West, even as Beijing maintains public distance from direct involvement. The confirmed tactics of support to date illustrate the sophistication of this collaboration in a time of open war. In the military sphere, Russia has supplied Iran with hundreds of Verba portable missiles, short-range air defense systems that complement the Russian S-300s already in Iranian possession and the HQ-9B batteries received in previous years. These systems, although limited against high-altitude aircraft, protect ground assets against low-altitude cruise missiles and drones, allowing Iran to preserve launch capability even after initial waves of American and Israeli strikes. China, for its part, has accelerated the supply of chemical precursors for missile propellants, enough for hundreds of ballistic projectiles, and components for unmanned aerial vehicles incorporating Chinese satellite navigation. Shared intelligence is the most critical element. Reports indicate that Moscow delivers real-time satellite imagery on American naval positions in the Gulf, while Beijing contributes electronic surveillance data from its satellite constellation. This hybrid cooperation has enabled Iran to coordinate retaliatory strikes against Gulf installations and Israel with a precision that has surprised Western observers, even in the face of the sustained air campaign launched on February 28. Economically, the tactics involve sanctions evasion networks. Fleets of ghost tankers transport Iranian oil to Chinese refineries, generating revenue that finances Russian technology imports. Diplomatically, Russia and China block unilateral condemnatory resolutions in the Security Council while promoting narratives that portray American and Israeli actions as the initial provocation. These measures do not transform Iran into an invincible power, but they raise the cost of any prolonged operation, forcing Washington and Tel Aviv to weigh losses across multiple simultaneous theaters. Lavrov's revelation takes on even graver contours when one considers the perceived abandonment of the Gulf allies. The Arab nations, which had repeatedly warned against the use of their territory for attacks on Iran, found themselves exposed when Iranian retaliation struck bases hosting American forces and energy installations. The temporary closure of airspace over Qatar, the Emirates, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia, coupled with the frustration expressed by local leaders over the lack of prior notification and adequate defense in some moments, exposes the fragility of American security guarantees. Washington, by prioritizing the discreet evacuation of high-value assets while maintaining only symbolic presence in certain points, left its Arab partners as shields in a conflict that escalated rapidly. This dynamic reinforces an ancient truth: the strategic coastal strip is only controlled when local powers perceive tangible benefits, not vague promises. The result is a vacuum that Russia and China fill with offers of alternative cooperation, whether through security dialogues in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization or infrastructure investments that diversify Gulf economies. The Iranian closure of the Strait of Hormuz aggravates this pressure, creating domino effects in the global economy that affect allies and adversaries alike. From a strategic viewpoint, Russian-Chinese support for Iran accelerates the formation of an axis that challenges American primacy in Eurasia. Russia benefits by prolonging the conflict in the Middle East, forcing the United States to divide attention and resources among Ukraine, the Indo-Pacific, and the Gulf. China, as an ascending economic power, consolidates its influence over the coastal strip by ensuring stable energy flows and indirectly testing modern warfare capabilities. This synergy is not a formal mutual defense alliance, but a flexible network of convergent interests that multiplies each actor's power against the offshore hegemon. Western policymakers must recognize that containment cannot be sustained by ad hoc interventions, or excessive confidence in isolated technological superiority. It requires sustained presence, credible deterrence, and alliances based on clear reciprocity. Philosophical skepticism imposes itself here. History does not advance in a straight line toward a convergent and peaceful world. It is marked by power competitions in which human nature, ambitious and cautious, dictates the moves. Ignoring this leads to strategic surprises, such as the current exposure of Gulf allies and the effective closure of one of the world's main maritime choke points. The implications for international policy are profound. For the military, the conflict demonstrates the need to invest in defenses against saturating drones and missiles, technologies that Iran, with external support, has refined even under intense bombardment. For geopoliticians, the coastal strip of the Middle East demands a strategy that integrates energy, maritime security, and diplomacy with regional powers without illusions of eternal loyalty. Scholars of international relations will find here material to test theories of power balance. Russian-Chinese support is not ideological but pragmatic, confirming that great powers act to maximize relative power. The lay reader, in turn, perceives that the world is not governed by good intentions, but by calculations of force and survival. The current war between the United States, Israel, and Iran is no accident. It is the logical unfolding of an anarchic system in which control of the coastal strip remains the supreme prize, and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz serves as a painful reminder of this truth. In conclusion, the strategies and tactics of Russia and China in support of Iran illustrate the vitality of ancient lessons about power and equilibrium in a multipolar world. The coastal strip is in flames, the strait is closed, and the global balance hangs in the balance. Washington and its partners must respond not with rhetoric, but with calibrated action that restores credible deterrence, realistically protects allies, and avoids the isolation of regional partners. The cost of inaction or miscalculation is clear: a coastal strip dominated by adversaries who will dictate the terms of the future order. The lesson is ancient, but always timely. Power respects only power, and geopolitics forgives no errors of calculation.